Good afternoon, everybody. We're just getting ready to start the webinar. Um, Hold on here. Let me just get my webcam up. And all right, there we go. Hi, everybody. This is Mary Beth Huberti with Operation Parent, and welcome to today's webinar, Parenting for an Independent and Self-Reliant Child. Dr. Stephen Van Soik is going to be our presenter with Karen Lawrence doing the question section. So we're really excited to get everybody here, and we've opened the doors to let everybody in. While everybody is coming into the webinar space, would love for you to go ahead and just enter your first name and where you're from in the question section. We do have a lot of registrations out of Ohio and Arizona. They were our top two states besides Kentucky, where we are located. We also had quite a few from North Carolina, Massachusetts, and for New Mexico. We're excited for New Mexico to come on in. So with that, go ahead and just enter in your name and where you're from. I see Beth from Ohio, Brian from Kentucky, Cynthia from Ohio, Eric, Indiana, North Carolina, Anna, Katie from, where did you go? Kentucky, Amber from Arizona, April from Pennsylvania, Julie from Louisville, let's see, Sue from Utah, welcome everybody. Edwin from California, Michaela from Rhode Island, Patty, Ohio, Janelle, New Mexico. There's our New Mexico contingent coming on in. So for those of you that are just joining us, if you just put your name and where you are from in the question section, we're just going to go through this for a little bit to let everybody get into this webinar space. Okay, I see, there we go, Deanna from New York City, Rhonda, Kentucky, Shokum from California, Jamie, Pennsylvania. I see anybody else? Yep, got some more people. Lauren, New Mexico, Heather, North Carolina. Great, this is wonderful. And welcome to everybody. And with that, it is now 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started on the webinar. Don't worry if you didn't answer that question of where you're from and everything. It's okay. It's just to allow everybody to get started here with our webinar space. So again, my name is Mary Beth Huberti. I'm the Director of Program Development here at Operation Parent. And today our webinar is Parenting for Independent and Self-Reliant Child. Dr. Stephen Van Soik from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, actually from where I am from, is joining us today, along with Karen Lawrence, and she will be doing the question section with Dr. Steve. So let me just go on to the next slide here. Just for future, our next webinar is on child sexual abuse. Not my child, not my family. Our presenter is Joe Carlton. He is a local counselor here. He has worked with children in this situation for well over 20 years. Wealth of information that he's going to provide to all of our guests to just understand what does it look like when someone is being groomed? What are some of the warning signs? What are some of the things within the family that we need to be concerned about, pay attention, and then also with reporting and understanding how to report. That'll take place on Tuesday, December 3rd from 2 to 3 p.m. So that is already open for registration at operationparent.org. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the microphone. I'm sorry, not the. All right, Michelle, is that you?
Thanks, Mary Beth. Awesome job. Hi, everyone. This is Michelle Massey. I am responsible for the webinar program here at Operation Parent. I'm also in the thick of raising two strong and amazing teen daughters myself. Operation Parent is a parent-driven organization providing comprehensive prevention education and support resources for parents, caregivers, and organizations responsible for raising and guiding teens. Before we get into the content of today, we want to go over a few of the technical features of GoToWebinar. If you're one of our faithful webinar attendees, you know this part already. But for our newbies, I'm going to take a quick moment to introduce you to the back end of our program today. First, on your webinar control panel, you'll see an orange arrow. It's up at the top of the screen. This arrow allows you to open and minimize the control panel. If you wish to view your screen without the control panel, just click on that orange arrow and minimize it. For now, though, please click on that orange arrow to open up your control panel and view all the features with me. All attendees are going to be muted during the presentation, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you. We're interested in hearing from you in the question section. That's about halfway down the control panel. You will send both questions and comments here. There's 3 panels there. The top panel shows you any questions that you've already posted, but below that is another light blue panel where you can type your questions and send them directly to me. You can send questions anytime during this live webinar. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Just keep in mind we may go a bit over the 60-minute mark, and if you need to hop off due to your schedule, please do so. We put together some awesome handouts for you all today. All articles that have been written by Dr. Van. One is entitled, "You Are Not the Boss of Me." The second one is "Adolescent Self-Management for a Successful Independence," what all of us parents dream of, for sure. And the third one is "How Does Self-Reliance Differ from Selflessness?" The fourth handout there is a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation for your future reference. Go ahead and double click on those handouts to begin the download process. The handouts will only be available in this section while we are live. About an hour prior to this webinar, we also sent an email containing the handouts. So if you don't download or you're not able to download here, just check your email for the handouts. We are recording this webinar, and each registrant will receive an email approximately 24 hours after the webinar, which will have a link to this recording and to our survey. If you've attended this live webinar, you may also receive an attendance certificate. The survey will only take you about 2 minutes to complete, and we value and definitely utilize all the feedback that we get. And it's my pleasure to turn it back over to Mary Beth.
Okay, everybody, hold on. Show all webcams. There we go. All right. What we will be learning and going over today. So let's just go over the learning objectives. Parents will learn the importance of understanding their own emotions. So in the interview today with Karen and Dr. Steve, or you might hear Dr. Van, either way, you will hear, oh, your webcam came on. There you are, Karen. You will hear the explanation on understanding emotions and how do you do that. You also learn the difference between self-reliance and obedience. And lastly, the rules for raising an independent and self-reliant child. Dr. Van, and I'm going to turn on your webcam now. Hold on. And I'm going to open up some microphones. Okay, there you are, Dr. Van and Karen. Dr. Van is a clinical psychologist with over 34 years in private practice. He's worked with adults, children's families, on a variety of topics, a lot of them related to raising families and family relationships. He is also the author of a book called Looking for Yourself in All the Wrong Places. You see that there on your screen. And we also have joining us today is Karen Lawrence. She is the founder of Camp Hi-Ho here in Louisville, Kentucky, and the mother of 3 grown children, Ben, Blaine, and Jennifer. With that, I just want to make sure everybody can hear your. Can you go ahead and just say hi and make sure the microphones are working?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello there.
Okay, I'm going to need you probably both just to speak up just a little bit. I'm going to turn off my webcam, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and just turn over. And for everybody, as you're watching this webinar, I do want to make you aware you can move the little box where the webinar is showing the web cameras. So please feel free. Just move that on your own, then you should be able to see the slides below. Okay, so with that, go ahead, Karen.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Steve, Dr. Steve.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
Are we ready to get going?
Yep.
We're all set.
Okay. What do you feel is different in parenting today?
I think the biggest problem with parents today is that they're driven by fear, and may not even realize it. Um, I don't think our generation did a very good job, I think, of establishing what are the principles that we tried to raise children by. We grew up in the hippie generation, and things were liberal and much more open to just kind of being natural as a parent. I mean, I was a parent at 22. My wife was 20. So we had children very young and just kind of relied on a lot of our own judgments. I think with the social media that's out there today, with the access to the internet, things are much more complex for
Right.
parents of today. And I think the professionals don't agree, which make it even harder for the parent because you got to play doctor in a sense to your own child. I think terrorism and 9/11 also impacted the psyche of our whole country and made parents naturally want to hold on to their children
Right.
too tightly. But I think the origin of that helicopter parenting, or what now is called snowplow parenting, or even kind of its reverse, which is free range parenting, are all reactions to fear, and that's part of what has to change.
Great. Can you explain what snowplow parenting is?
Yeah, it's a parent who basically assigns himself the responsibility to create opportunities for their children. Instead
Okay.
of teaching their children to create their own
Right.
opportunities, they snowplow the way for the child.
Okay.
So, it's the parent who will
Yeah.
write the child's essay for college,
Yeah.
or you know,
Science fair. Yeah.
or pay $500,000 to gain admission or whatever. Yeah.
What is different then about your approach to parenting, Dr. Steve?
Well, I'm asking people to make kind of a revolutionary shift in the way that they see themselves and the way they see their children. Almost looking at the concept of what's our basic nature. We parent based on our understanding of who children are and who we are. So the traditional psychiatric thought, for example, believes that people are self-destructive. And Freud even, thought we had a death instinct. And that's permeated a lot of the approaches to treatment. So when you see a child begin to act up in some way, it's very easy to begin to believe that, the aggressive or sexual impulses are coming out, and we need to now make this child compliant and obedient. We've also had thousands of years of kind of a framework for our religions that have supported, that human behavior is driven by being good or bad. And while that might work in a religious context, it's very primitive to understand it that way in a psychological context. So what I'm advocating for is something that our founding fathers were kind of the initiators of. And I really believe that the founding fathers, kind of almost more than a Sigmund Freud, had really the answer, because they began life with the premise that people do things for a reason, and you can trust people to self-govern because people will make choices that make sense to them. So I'm asking people to basically apply that same principle to their own children, and to start with the idea that little children are like little people, but they don't have the information. They sometimes don't have the ability to understand what's going on with them emotionally, and we need to educate the children about their own emotions. We certainly can't do that until we educate ourselves about our own emotions and kind of know what to look for and know how to read that. But it's a shift in moving away from parenting for obedience and compliance, and parenting to kind of teach the child to understand themselves. Now,
Right. Hmm.
but that makes sense to you, Karen?
Yes. How do we do that?
Well,
Especially if we don't understand ourselves very well.
well, that's kind of the critical issue that I try to address in my book about
Right.
looking for yourself in all the wrong places. Is we actually have two sources of human emotions. We have learned emotions that we learn at the hands of our mom and dads, and then we have our own natural emotions. And our own natural emotions are emotions like anger and sadness and joy, kind of very simple reactions that either make you feel good or make you feel bad, and we don't trust those. In fact, we learn to bury them as we become children, because our
Absolutely.
parents force us to comply,
Right.
with their rules and the way they see things. So all of us bury a lot of these natural reactions. So part of what I'm asking people to do is begin to understand, let's not make our kids have to bury those emotions. Let's teach them what they are, how to use them. And that, now I'm not advocating, getting rid of timeouts or things like that. And people will spend sometimes too much time explaining to a child something to try to calm them down. I'm talking about trying to stop protecting our children from the realities of life and start to educate them, even as tiny, small children, that kids can handle things as long as the parents can handle them. And if the parent handles them and explains them in an age appropriate way, then the children can begin to believe in themselves, can begin to trust themselves, and will grow to become independent and self-reliant.
Very good. So you base your parenting on an American psychology described in your book. What is American about your approach to parenting?
Let's start with that Jefferson quote that's on the
Right.
slide. Is in the Declaration of Independence, he claimed that we know these truths to be self-evident. Well, if you look at the term self-evident, what that implies is that there's natural reason that exists in all of us. And Jefferson did a lot of writings about natural rights and natural reason. But what that amounts to is that people do things for a reason, even if on the surface it doesn't look that way. Like, I had a patient who came to me just diagnosed with throat cancer because he was smoking 2 packs a day. And he now had jumped to 4 packs a day. And he said to me, "What do I have, a death wish?" And the answer was, no, you don't have a death wish. You just got told something that makes you incredibly stressed. So you use cigarettes to control your stress. So it's obvious why it would have doubled. He
Right.
didn't have a death instinct. He didn't want to die, but he didn't know any other way to manage his stress. So in other words, he did something for a reason that made sense to him, even though from the outside in it might look crazy or abnormal. It truly wasn't. And the founding fathers believed in those judgments made by every single man. And we need to extend that also then to our children, to teach them how to be self-reliant, independent, restore that kind of pioneering spirit, that spirit of individuality, is totally getting lost. And I believe that's a big part of some of the problems we're having in today's world.
Wow. We're teaching them to conform instead of be their authentic self, and help them discover who their authentic self is.
Exactly. As a parent, you have the power to mute your child. And you may not realize it, but when we react to them in certain ways, like, "Oh, I can't believe you did that," or "Shame on you," or you're the most terrible child in the world, or some kind of statements that shame the child horribly, the child will go mute. They'll mute their own reactions. And look, we all do those things as parents. I mean, but
And,
the issue is, can we be more aware of them? Can we do them less? And can we repair the damage when we make a mistake?
well, using your approach, the Dr. Steve approach, what are the goals that you have for us as parents?
The basic goal and the basic job of a parent to me is to teach your child to understand themselves. To do that, you've got to understand yourself first. You've got to understand that there's always two sides of you kind of talking internally, and that those two sides represent kind of the tug of war between your own natural reactions trying to come out and the way you were taught by your mom and dad. It's almost like it boils down to anger versus shame and guilt. And most people are scared to death of their anger. They're taught that anger is a bad thing because they think of it as rage. They think of it as an explosion, as, those aggressive animal instincts coming out. Well, they only come out because we tend to bottle them and not use them and ignore the problem that's causing all the tension to build. So it's like the soda bubbles in a can of soda are there for a reason. They taste good. They're fizzy. They have value. But if you shake them up and then pop the top, everything explodes. That's kind of like anger. Anger's like those bubbles. It belongs for a reason. It's not, though, productive when it explodes. So people need to first understand that about themselves. So when you see a child emotionally overreacting, losing control of themselves, a small child having a temper tantrum, not only do you need to use timeouts appropriately, but you need to help the child to learn how to self-soothe. That's kind of the origin of learning to be independent and self-reliant. It's like the bedtime routines with a parent rocking the child or going in, having the child sleep in the parent's bed. The child never learns to self-soothe. They never learn how to manage the fears of the boogeyman. You have small children who will sometimes come into their parents' bedroom and say, Mommy, there's a ghost in my room or whatever. And the mother or father will make the mistake of bringing the child into their bed. When they do that, they've actually told the child that there really is a boogeyman
There's
in
a
there.
boogeyman there. You better come sleep with me.
That's right. I'll protect you.
Yeah.
And the child then learns to rely on the parent as a source of protection, as opposed to taking the child back in, showing the child that there's nothing there, reassuring the child, and then leaving the room. A lot of parents won't do that. They will basically take the shortcut, but it leaves the child not being able to face their own fears and their own emotions.
Great. So, trust your child, self-reliance. Okay. On your website, you wrote an article entitled, "You Are Not the Boss of Me," and the list of the 12 rules of parenting for self-reliance. I'd like to ask you a question about each of those 12 rules. Why do you put such an emphasis on trusting your emotions when others preach controlling your emotions?
Because in my 5 years of clinical practice, the thing that has astounded me about people is how much we are driven by our own emotions and don't even realize it. I mean, I've dealt with everything from people who have multiple personalities to to like cutting behavior in a 14-year-old girl. Those are not expressions of abnormality. Those are expressions of intense anxiety. And typically, for example, a multiple personality will only come out of a highly abusive environment where it's an adaptation to what, to the fear that's gone on with that. Just like the 14-year-old cutter isn't trying to commit, to do harm. They're trying to prevent suicide by intensively and obsessively focusing on the pain that they're creating.
Can I
These are
ask a
all
question about cutting, Dr. Steve?
sure.
Is this something new with teenagers and young people, or has this been around for a long time? I've just not heard of it before the last 10 years.
The incidence of it, Karen, is rising almost exponentially. It's now, the last survey I saw was almost 1 in 4 teens will have some form of it. What it is an obsessive compulsive ritual that makes people obsessively focus on the pain so that the pain of the anxiety and depression or the relationship failures, they can ignore that.
I see.
So we've had different obsessional mechanisms. You have eating disorders, you have cutting. I don't know why the incidence has gone up so much, as it's just so has a lot of the other kind of defensive reactions to anxiety and
Right. The stresses and the anxiety is so much higher that that's going to have more of an impact on cutting and
oh, sure. And a lot of times as parents, you have to read these emotional expressions. So a child sometimes will express their anxiety in physical kind of problems, whether it be inability to sleep, whether change their eating habits. Also, something as subtle as attention and concentration problems.
right.
That the kid can't do his homework. It isn't that they're trying to get out of it. It's that this kid's anxious or he's
Right.
depressed. Something's really bothering this kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to start with an assumption that as people, we are feeling beings who happen to think and not thinking beings who happen to feel. And our understanding of ourselves too often stays at the level of thoughts and we need to get to the emotions that cause the thoughts. Because when you get to that level, then you can truly make a change. But that's that issue of learning to understand yourself differently,
Mm-hmm.
and why, to me, that's the golden rule kind of parenting differently.
Right. So why is it so important to believe in natural reason?
Well, natural reason is the origin of that authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't believe in natural reason, you don't know how to explain why do I sometimes have two voices talking at me, inside my
Right.
head.
Right.
It also becomes the basis for us to believe in ourselves and believe in our children. We are born with a knowledge of what feels right or what feels wrong, and we have to, and children know that. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
tell us it sometimes, even if we
Right.
think we're doing something for a good reason. If it doesn't, if it doesn't fit with the child, and they'll tell you, they're like, mommy, daddy, stop it, that doesn't feel good.
Right.
And so by responding to the child, you validate their natural reason and give them the ability to believe in themselves.
Very good.
I'll give
Like
you a
that.
little example. My 3-year-old granddaughter, I have 6 grandchildren, as you know. My 3-year-old was talking to me, called me, wanted to do FaceTime. And she was in the middle of something. My daughter calls her over and she sits down. And then I see her stick her fingers in her mouth, which is her self-soothing kind of thing. So I'm like, oh, okay, something's wrong. And she turns to her mommy and says, Mommy, I don't want to talk now. But she was too afraid to tell us. So
Right.
so the mom said it. So we were like, oh, no problem. We don't have to talk. We'll call you another time. See you later. But she was scared to basically bring that to us, right?
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to hurt my feelings. She wanted to be all excited for grandpa and grandma. But hopefully that exchange taught her it's okay to use your own natural reason. If it didn't feel good, we'll move on and do something
Right.
else.
Yeah. It's not that important. and
No,
no
and
no
she has
guilt
a
there.
right to say, I don't want to do this now.
Right. She does. Yeah. So children act up all the time. Are you asking us to trust what they're saying to us when they're screaming and yelling, for example?
No, I'm asking you, though, to have patience and not take personally when a child erupts, and also
Right.
not make it your job to have to calm them down.
Mm-hmm.
It's their job to calm them down. It's your job to create an environment to allow that.
Part
So
of this art,
yeah,
self-soothing again.
yes, but I'm a big believer in timeouts. When you have a child who's losing control, they're not going to learn anything from you in that state. So they need to be given a timeout so that they can calm down. They need to be released when they've shown stability. So I always recommend use a 1-minute egg timer, because children don't know time, and flip over the thing and they say, well, if you can sit quietly for this thing to run its course, then you're free to come out. So that the kid has to show some stability to it, not just say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm fine, I'm fine. But they need to then understand what got them upset to begin with, and how did it build up? How did it become like that shaking can of soda? And that's
Right.
where you need to go back to help them identify what were they trying to tell you by
Is that
acting
called a
that way.
trigger?
Yes, yes. So kids don't really, they don't understand a lot of times what's hitting them. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a 10-year-old boy who was wetting the bed and driving his mother crazy. Every night she'd have to, do the sheets and everything. And they couldn't get him to stop with the traditional behavioral methods and everything else. So they brought him to me, and as I was talking to the child, I knew there had to be something kind of behind this. Well, it turns out when his dad had died,
Mm,
and the day before his dad died, he had gone in and told his dad how mad he was because the dad had been in the hospital, and
yeah.
and nobody had really explained that to the kid, so the kid felt like his dad just blew him off, and his dad didn't even remember it was his birthday, and he said to him,
Dr. Spain, I think we just lost your connection. Dr. Van, are you still there? Because we just lost your webcam. You still there?
Looks like he's frozen.
Yeah, he looks like his computer froze on him, or a power hit. Okay. Okay, we're just going to wait a moment, and he'll try to come back in. Looks like he went offline to try to come back in. Let me turn off his cam, and it is frozen. There it goes. Okay. And we'll just have to wait for him to come back in. Sorry, everybody. We have hiccups. Unfortunately, things happen. And we'll just wait for Dr. Van to re-enter the webinar space. Are you there yet, Dr. Van? Yep. We are waiting. Hold on. And see if we can get him to come on back. All right. Dr. Van, are you there yet? Nope. It looks like he is hung up. His computer must have, or something happened there. Hold on. Karen, I'm going to take you off web camera for just a bit. Hate to have you just keep sitting there and do that. So let me just take your web camera down, give you a little break here. And while we wait for Dr. Van. Hey, Dr. Van, are you there yet? I just muted your mic. Is your webcam? Is it? Because I don't see it on this end. All right. Okay. You should be off now. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We're just waiting for Dr. Van to come back on, and we'll see if I can come up with what's going on here. Hold on for just a minute. Yeah, he has gone offline completely, it looks like. Hold on for just a minute. Everybody, I am just apologizing again for the technical difficulties we're experiencing on Dr. Van's end. It looks like his computer froze. I'm not sure. We're trying to get a hold of him, and I'm sure he's probably trying to get a hold of us. So I appreciate your patience. As soon as we can get him back online, we'll continue the conversation. If it takes too long, we will end the webinar, and we may have to try to redo it. So if you just be patient just for a few more moments, I'm going to mute myself and try to get a hold of Dr. Van.
Okay, take it away. All right. Goodbye. Bye-bye. I don't know.
All right.
Should we maybe have them have some questions and
Yeah, but I think they're all directed to Dr. Van. Um,
okay.
Everybody, we're waiting for him to come in. And Dr. Van, is that you?
That's me. Am I here? Are we good?
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to bring your web camera back up. And Michelle's back up. Do you see your request, your webcam request?
No, wait. Let me see. There it is. Okay.
Okay. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. We just had
There we
a,
go. That should do it.
okay. And
Okay.
let me get everybody in here, show webcams. There you are, and there you are. Okay, we're back on. Thank you, everybody, for your
Okay. Sorry.
patience. All right,
Thank you
I
for
believe
everyone's patience.
you were giving a story about a 10-year-old who father had passed and with the bedwetting. That's where it seemed to have
Right.
cut
And
out.
I think I was concluding with that story about how children act out their emotions. They don't realize it and they need help, sometimes from professionals, but a lot of times more from their parents to understand what's going on. So on to the next one, Karen.
Okay. Michelle, I don't know. Your name is up here. I'm not Michelle, but okay, I'll go with that. Don't you want to raise an obedient child rather than risk raising a spoiled brat or one who's disrespectful?
The approach I'm taking can be misunderstood to mean giving away the keys to the asylum to the inmates. It's really trying to get you to understand that children learn by trial and error. They naturally push boundaries because that's what smart children do. And parents sometimes take that personally or take affront. For example, it's very common for a parent to be upset that if the mother or father says no, the child then goes to the other parent to say, hey, do you agree? And then the parent feels that that's an act of disrespect. Well, in fact, what it is an attempt to make sure that the truth is being followed. It's not an act of disrespect any more than in our court system in America, going to an appellate court is an act of disrespect to the court system. I mean, we build that into the American system, but we don't even practice and preach it in our own home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of what I'm asking parents to do is encourage your children, go get another opinion. Go, if you think I'm wrong, go ask your dad or go ask your mom, or
Right.
to not take it as a rule of law that it's about, that obedient children don't talk back. Granted, if they present their request in an ugly way, curse at you, or nasty, you need to then counsel them about that, time them out if that's a necessary punishment at that point. But you still need to address the issue that it's okay for them to get a second opinion.
Great. All righty.
That's part of that American system, right?
Yes.
Where you're allowed to
Yes.
push back and you're allowed to have some freedoms.
I guess
We
I
don't
shouldn't
practice
ask.
that.
I guess I shouldn't ask this question because it might get us off course. But
Go ahead.
what happens when the parents disagree and they get a different answer?
That's a great question. I knew you'd do this. What happens is that's a time for the parents to step back and find out why do they disagree and come to some agreement to have some compromise arrangement and report that back to the child.
So they have this discussion behind closed doors and then are united front.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, the concept of united front has been, I think, misapplied. It's been used to basically hide the truth. And if a parent in a sense misbehaves by overreacting to their child, that should be something that is discussed, with their spouse. It shouldn't be something hidden, and then it should be circled back to the child to have some understanding and explanation for what happened. It shouldn't be a means to keep secrets and just support authority that has been abusive potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Because as parents, we don't mean to hurt our kids, but there are times because of our own misunderstanding of ourselves that we react too strongly or we have our own issues. And that's why we need a spouse to, in a loving way, be able to help us make an adjustment. So, because if that's not true, then the child is subject to that overreaction. And that's not fair because parents have much greater power than the child and is molding, remember, the emotional response.
And I think it's important that the child knows that the parent has more, is more in control. They don't want to be in control. Not
Right,
really.
right.
They
But I think
yeah,
they know that instinctively.
right.
You know,
Gives them comfort, don't you
yeah,
think? Yeah.
yes, most definitely.
Yeah. Well, parents have enough trouble understanding themselves, let alone try to understand the behavior of their children. Why are you advocating for parents to teach their children how to read their own emotions?
Because based on what I said before about we are feeling beings who happen to think, the more we can help our children see their emotions, the more powerful the children are, the more self-reliant they can be, the more
Mm-hmm.
independent they can be. So that as you learn these things yourself as a parent, you need to help the child to basically interpret and read their own emotions so that they can harness them. They have the same dichotomy going on inside of them that we all do.
You think that's achieved by asking them questions like, how did that make you feel? And why do you think you felt that way? Do you think sometimes it's helpful as parents for us to help them, guide them to come to that conclusion instead of us giving them the answers?
Oh, that's a great point, and I agree with you completely. It's a little bit like parents have to do my job
Mm-hmm.
and need to explore with the child and help use their own experience to say, hey, when I did that, I've realized that I was mad. Were you mad at all? So you give the child permission to it by making it normal, by offering up your own struggle. Those are really important things to do to help educate and teach the child.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Your approach does emphasize the need for boundaries and structure, but why is it important for the child?
Um, because that's how a child encounters their own emotions. They have to deal with frustration. When you bring them a limit, they
Hmm.
then have to work their way through that. And if child doesn't have any experiences with that, they overreact and their emotions run wild. So when you take a child, for example, who has never had to self-soothe, who's gone to their sleep routines involve leaning on the parents, and they go to kindergarten, um, they can easily act out, and they might smack another kid or become aggressive because they have no experience in managing their own frustrations.
Mm.
So you have to be able to help children build up that experience base by having to deal with structure and boundaries and timeouts, from positive reinforcement. It's all part of the training emotionally that goes into raising a child.
You talk about parenting as a lifelong job and worry about the fears of young parents. What can you tell a young parent today to reduce their fears?
Um, Befriend your anger. Your anger is your antidote for your fear. And by anger, I mean your own fighting spirit, your own natural reason is what you have to learn to embrace first to be able to then teach children to be able to do that. I'll give you an example. A lot of parents today, the way their fears play out is they overprogram their children. So they're running to soccer and they're going to the karate classes and they've got, music lessons and swimming lessons. There's no time for family dinners. There's no time to sit down and self-reflect. I try to get the parents I work with to have at least 2 family dinners a week and cancel the other lessons, get rid of them, because the time spent with a parent is far more important than time spent with a yoga instructor or or a soccer coach.
Oh no. Oh no. He's frozen again. Well, this is actually something I can address because of Camp Idaho. If we want to try to, that was part of the reason that I created the camp in the first place. Children were just so overscheduled, the parents had them going from one activity to the next. And what they loved about Camp Hi-Ho was they were able to come to camp and pick and choose what they wanted to do. And we call it their vacation. And it builds so much confidence because there's really no right or wrong other than behavior. But we have to allow them to make these choices. We have to allow them to, do you want to fish? No, I really don't like fishing, but I really want to ride horses. That's fine. Nobody's going to make you have to fish. So let's just say they decide they want to fish and they're allowed to do that all day, because when you're on vacation, what do you like to do? You like to do what you want. And their children are little people. And I think sometimes we forget that they need what we need. And they need to create their own time out in their own space and not have us program them so much that it becomes way more stressful for the child.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, we see, hold on, I'll get my web camera on here so we can keep this going. Hold on.
I think a lot of the overscheduling is also to do with competitiveness with the parents. They think Susie's taking art classes and dance classes and gymnastics classes, and these are 4 and 5 and 6-year-old children. I think a parent thinks, am I being a bad parent because I don't have Susie in all these classes? And I think that's what
Mhm.
Dr. Steve talks about and addresses, that is so important, is check into your own authentic self. What feels good to you? Because if it doesn't feel good to you, you're not gonna own it, and the children are gonna see right through you. I have 6 grandchildren as well, just like Dr. Steve, and I've learned more through my grandchildren in a way. They see right through us. They are so honest, and they are razor sharp and X-ray vision, and they're going to see if we're being truthful or authentic and call us out on it.
Okay. I'm going to, we don't know when Dr. Van's going to get back on here, and I just apologize. He is having problems on his end with his computer, and the computer is cutting out on him, and that's what's causing the issue that we're going through right at this time. The next rule is rule number 8, which is independence is homegrown. I don't know how to answer that, or just talk about from experience. Karen, what have you seen in raising your child? They can see Dr. Van's trying to come in again, and we'll get him back on here if we can. Dr. Van, are you there again?
Yeah,
Okay,
you got me?
I'm
We do.
trying.
There it is. Okay,
Okay. All
there we go.
right, there you go. We just moved to independence is homegrown.
Sounds good. Did you miss me,
Okay.
Karen?
I did. You got a tough job there, Dr. Steve. So, how can a parent use their relationship to promote independence and self-reliance?
Independence is homegrown. By that, I believe that you as a parent basically lay the groundwork for the blueprint emotionally that this child's going to take for every relationship and for the rest of their lives. So the more emotionally honest you are, the more you enable the child to have a dialogue with you, to learn about their emotions, the better they're going to be to basically practice emotional honesty in the relationships that they have. So that you're setting the table basically as a parent for all future relationships. we know that because something as simple as like in an adult, sometimes a person will confuse an opinion with a demand. If you say like, I'd like to go to the movies, somebody who's been raised in a really strict household will come back with, well, why is it always your way? And why do we have to do things that you want? As opposed to, see, they're taking it as a demand then, as opposed to come back with, well, I wanted to go bowling. So, okay, let's figure out how to do both.
Mm-hmm.
Those very little simple things are revealed all the time in our relationships that cause us to get snagged. Understanding that with our children now gives us a chance to develop the right blueprint so those kind of things going forward don't happen.
Right. So, why do you believe that the parent-child relationship is the basis for all relationships?
Let's see, I think I just
one.
answered it. We skipped one. We got out of sequence. But anyway, okay, jump to the next one.
Okay. I'm waiting. That's the same one.
It's question number 13.
Okay, so the basic idea here is that you can teach children to be emotionally honest and responsible in your own relationship to them. And the more you can do that, the more emotionally honest, the more the child can access their own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And the easier it is for them to read themselves, the more honest they can be, with their peers.
Mm-hmm.
So kids, remember, are parents have more power than children naturally. So it's very easy for children to be afraid of opening up to their parents. The parents need to encourage that. Just like my granddaughter, was afraid to tell me she didn't want to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
We have to not take those moments personally as a parent, but be able to help our children read their own emotions, especially the fear of being honest with us.
Right.
A lot of times parents, for example, will say, oh, my child lies to me. Well, I think lies too hard is an attack on the child's character. The better way to understand it is they're hiding from you because they're scared of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to factor that in when you're talking to the child, that your words are very powerful and who you are as a person can affect them in ways far greater than you can imagine. The only way to imagine it is think back to how your parents affected you, and probably even to this day still continue to affect you in ways that other people can't.
Right.
But the parent-child bond is a very powerful one and almost irrationally big. And it never goes away.
No, we know that.
Well, that's right.
You have written many articles about anger being your best friend. How can a parent be expected to promote their child's right to be angry when that anger is directed at the parent?
Well, that's because I believe the parent has to do some psychological work when you raise a child to realize that this child isn't yours. It's kind of been loaned to you for some period of time, and to separate from you means you've actually done your job. Trying to hold on to the closeness that you want to have an experience with the child will prevent the child from flying the nest. That they separate in anger because if it feels too good, they're not going anywhere. They're gonna stay at home. They almost have to get mad, almost too mad, to be able to say, well, I can do this by myself and I'm going to do this. And they're scared to death that they don't know how to survive in the world. And they almost have to try to impress themselves that they can do that. You can't take that personally as a parent.
I feel like it means you're doing a very good job as a parent to continue to clip their wing, fly. You need to fly.
But it's paradoxical because it doesn't feel good as a parent.
No, and it's a lifelong process, I think.
Well, you put a lot of time and work and effort into your child, so it's easy to feel like you want to maintain that same close connection, but it's not healthy, especially as the child gets older. You have to learn to let them fly the nest.
Right. Encourage it, not discourage it.
Right.
Parenting the adult child can cause much heartache in the parent. And what's the best advice that you can give us as parents of adult children?
Well, as I was just describing a second ago, it's probably one of the hardest and last gifts you need to give your child. You need to teach the child how to be angry with you in a respectful way. So it's not that the yelling and the screaming and the name calling needs to be responded to calmly, to listen to the message and then try to clean up the content. But you have to be prepared that that's what your job is. The best way to do that is to focus back on your marriage, to focus back on your relationship to your spouse. If you're divorced and you don't have a spouse, to lean into friends, to be able to, in a sense, remake your world so that as the child leaves, you focus on restoring kind of what your life looked like before you had children.
Who you were before.
Yeah.
Right.
And you
Right.
build off of that and you recreate yourself and you don't stop living. You free your child and you move on. If you get stuck in holding onto the child too tightly, then the child and you will end up with tremendous conflicts and problems that feel even worse.
And I will quote what you told me to do, and it's the best quote ever for adults, for parents who have adult children. Get in the back seat gracefully, because you're going to wind up there anyway. So go there gracefully. I've even decided the trunk's not such a bad place to be. So
Sometimes that's where we belong.
yes, you can't get in much trouble in the trunk.
No.
All right, so we just want to go over the rules. Dr. Vanna, is there anything you wanted to add as you go over the rules again, just for everybody, if you don't mind?
No, not at all. Let me, do you want me to read the rules?
Sure, I think that'd be good.
Okay. Number one is we are feeling beings who happen to think, not thinking beings who happen to feel. That's the idea of learning to understand yourself. You, as well as your children, have natural reason. It's innate. You need to learn how to trust it. The children act out their emotions, and they need help from you to basically understand how to read their behavior, to find those emotions. The children learn by trial and error to not take that personally. Children need to be taught to see themselves through their emotions so that they learn how to work with them within relationships. Children feel safe with boundaries and structure. Don't hesitate to have structure for your children, but make it defined. Children need consistency to develop hope for the future. As consistent as you can be is what will help the children feel hope for the future. Independence is homegrown. You develop it in your bond with them. Children who demonstrate responsibility should earn freedom. You need to make sure that your guidelines for protection change as the child gets older. The child learns the rules of relationships in the parent-child bond. Children separate in anger to become independent. And lastly, grown children replace their parents with new partners, so don't take it personally. Get in the trunk.
Get in the trunk. All right.
And let them let you out when they're ready.
Even better.
All right, so right now would be a great time for some questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and send them in the question section. I'm going to go through a few slides and then we'll go back and answer the questions. Just a reminder of our next webinar is Sexual Abuse, Not My Child, Not My Family, on Tuesday, December 3rd with Joe Carlton, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It is already open for registrations at operationparent.org. For those of you that are new to Operation Parent, we are available on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find our postings there. Please follow us, sign up for our e-newsletter. If you haven't done so already, you can do that on our website. Purchase our parent handbook, I'll talk about in a moment, and attend a future webinar. Our parent handbooks are available online in our store. We have an elementary version, which is available in English and in Spanish and a Christian edition, as well as the middle and high school. These are topic-driven giving trends, misconceptions, and warning signs, especially in the middle and high school book. In the elementary, it's going to be talking about friendships, bullying, how do you teach your child coping skills, much more on the elementary level. So I'm going to go back now with some questions here, and let's do that right now. And I'll just leave it open for either one of you to just talk about how this works. Okay, exactly how is free range parenting controlled by fear?
Because it's an overreaction. It's not a natural and normal thing. It's an attempt to have to prove something that doesn't rely on natural reason. It's an overreaction that basically is the expression of fear.
Okay, so just letting them go and do what they want is afraid of controlling them too much?
Exactly. It's afraid of
Okay.
conforming, and they're an overreaction to the helicopter type parenting. That's not using natural reason.
So then helicopter parenting is, just so everybody's clear on what that one means.
Helicopter parenting is when you hover over the child and you basically
don't let them make any mistakes.
Right.
Don't allow them to make mistakes. You mop and bucket parents.
Right, and you don't allow them to fail, for example. You want to run ahead of them and make sure that they've done their homework, as opposed to if they go to school and get an F. That's probably a better way for them to learn.
Right.
Okay. All right. So when your child wants to hurt other people, as a parent, should we let them in order to teach them the right way to do things, rather than teach them to conform that it is not a normal feeling? If I'm misunderstanding the basic concept, please let me know. So I think it's a matter of how you
so
teach
you
that.
have to separate content and style. A child hitting another child's never okay.
Right.
And you need to deal then with protecting the other children and using timeout, for example, to train the child how to be less impulsive. What I'm talking about is trying to catch it before it reaches that point. The child's probably shown some signs of agitation, done something. That's when you need to pull them aside to talk to them, or to distract them. But the idea, there's no way that I'm condoning that hitting another, a child hitting another child's out of bounds. It's not even self-respecting for the child that does it. It scares that child.
Okay. So if they don't want to brush their teeth before bed, what would be an appropriate response?
Hey, Karen, you want to take this one?
Oh boy. Wow, I was hoping you would take this, because
What did you do?
gave up. I didn't fight that much about it. And I said, if you want to have cavities, then you want to go to the dentist, and that's up to you. But I didn't have that many nights where that was a fight, but it was definitely a fight. It's a fight with my grandchildren. I had when Jake was 4, he was spending the night, and I said, okay, it's time to brush your teeth. And he said, oh, no, because it's dark outside. Mommy won't let me brush my teeth when it's dark outside. Like, okay, you win. I was pretty clever. And because I'm the grandmother, I can let it go. But I think every once in a while they can have a say-so about whether they feel like brushing their teeth or not. I don't think we should make a huge deal about it. I always had his sayings, just choose your battles, because there are a lot of battles. Is that one that you want to create a night of fighting, and where is it going to go from there?
I agree with you completely. And I think you use the professional, the dentist, as your resource. And let the dentist educate them, and
Right.
And like you said, the natural consequences are going to be the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you can educate the child about, like, saying, so do you want to have bad breath and you want nobody to want to talk to you, and your teeth are going to be rotting, and why is this a good thing?
You won't be able to eat corn on the cob. All your teeth are going to fall out. Yeah.
Right. So you educate, but I don't think you want to lock horns and make this something you go to the mat over.
I agree.
I had something similar with my kids going into middle school, they didn't want to wear a jacket. And we went through the fighting about it, and then I thought, fine, let it be, and just let them go. It wasn't until a few months into it that I finally got the information of there's no room in my locker. How the heck am I going to take a coat and shove it in there when there's no room? And so in actuality, it was nothing to do with I didn't want to bring a jacket because everybody else is not bringing a jacket. It was simply there was no physical space in my locker to put the jacket, so I don't want it. Otherwise, I'd be carrying it all day. And I remember thinking, I wish somebody had told me that right at the beginning. So stop fighting that battle.
Yeah.
So I have a student with DMDD, and we discuss controlling emotions. She uses her diagnosis as an excuse. I'm
She's
not sure.
clever.
What's DMDD?
You know, I'd have to look that up.
Okay. So what about if somebody is
Just say
having trouble?
if any child that might have some kind of emotional health problem, you have to separate. Even though they've been given a label, I always question whether the labels are cover up for emotional health problems. That's that distinction between normal and abnormal. A lot of times, what we call disorders are really just defensive reactions to anxiety. I had 2 children I've been working with severe OCD. They've been through every treatment in the book, medication, everything else. They basically, by helping them to emotionally respond to the family situation they had, which was horrible, they both kind of grew out of it.
Dr. Steve,
Mm-hmm.
just in case, DMDD, I looked it up, disruptive mood dysfunction, or I just lost my place. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder is what that stands for, or deregulation, DYSREGULATION disorder.
I think my advice to the parent who wrote that is get another opinion, and I'd question the diagnosis. And it's not that the child's necessarily using it against you. It's she may be angry and is not finding a way to basically put that out on the table. So what happens in those kind of kids is you get a lot of mood swings going on.
Yeah, it said they were, I read a little bit about it and said 2 or 3 major temper tantrums a week, and, just having, sounds to me like it could also be a very strong-willed child situation.
Right. So it makes the parent have to work even harder
Really
because
hard.
you've got a kid with a strong temperament. You don't want to break their spirit.
Right.
But you gotta work harder at it, and the parent may be getting frustrated, and the child is reacting to the parent's frustration because the kid can't help but be the way they are. So I'm making a lot of assumptions, and I apologize to the person who had that question that I don't really know the case, but my bottom line is I would get another opinion.
Okay. My child is afraid to try anything new where she might get hurt, i.e. riding a bike, sparring in her karate class. She is 7 years old and has never had any serious injury. I told her she needs to believe in herself and that I believe in her, and she said she was more confident when she was younger. How can I support her and help her understand it's okay to take a risk?
You want to jump in, Karen?
I can jump in on that. I think we encourage him. What's the worst thing that can happen? You fall off your bike. You're wearing a helmet. Wear long pants in case you fall. Let's wear a long shirt. But it's almost a fear of failure, it sounds like. That maybe a perfectionism in a child that is afraid to make a mistake, or afraid. I don't know. What do you think?
My worry, if the person who wrote the question came to see me, what I would be looking for is that she may be giving double messages to her child. Well, on the one hand, she supports her child's independence. She may be not managing her own parental fears of letting the child learn by the natural consequences. Kids
Mm.
kids aren't born perfectionists. They learn that because they become afraid of disappointing their parents. So
And
there,
that's why
there's
you're the doctor.
uh, so there's a mixed message is what I would look for.
How so? What do you mean by mixed message?
That uh, the mom or the dad or both, while they want their daughter to be independent, may be reacting out of their own fears to the child, and the child reads that,
Okay.
and so therefore they become risk aversive because they're picking up on mom and dad's fears.
So it's almost like when the child falls, they look to see if you react to the fall.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. So it's trying to learn how to just calmly let them fall.
Right. And as Karen said, cut them loose to experience the natural consequences on their own.
Okay. Is it possible to provide too many or too strict boundaries and structures that would limit independence, especially in children who experience anxiety in new situations? And how do you balance allowing independence with a lot of structure?
I think you have to. I mean, this is kind of what Camp Hi Ho is kind of based on, isn't it, Karen? Is
Hmm.
like, let's eliminate the structure and let the kids kind of learn. And I think as a parent, it's very hard to make those choices. I think you have to make choices based on the personality of your child, as well as history and circumstances.
I wish I could. I've done Camp Hio as many years as you've been in practice, and I wish I could convey to the young parents and parents that in all the years of giving children 33 years, 34 years of freedom, there's only been a couple of cases, and that's because there was autism involved in all the years where the children didn't seek out, they became much more responsible by choosing their own activities, less fighting, less. It's my husband used to come out and say, "Looks like you've got them all drugged because they're just happy. They're happy because they're doing what they have chosen to do." And nobody ever wandered off. I had the one time try to, but he was just diagnosed with autism, and but I'm saying for the most part, every one of these children, I learned this from them. I didn't teach it to them. I thought it may be mayhem when I came up with this idea, and to just see them just fall into place and make really good choices and make good decisions was something that they taught me.
I think children are I think parents' fears are controlled with an overly structured environment, but I think that children become very instantly very dependent on that structure, and I think we want to reverse that and provide as much choice as possible. Now, the parent can provide structure through choice. I mean, you don't let them do exactly what they want at Camp Hi-Ho. There's
Give them good
boundaries about,
choices.
but
Right,
but there's choices that
right.
they have to make, and I
And
think
they're all
that's
good. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the work of the parent. I think is to have to come up with those choices rather than go the easy route that says I just no, you can't do that.
Okay, and this is going to be our last question for today. A 13-year-old is good at studies but has a lot of attitude, does not want to listen to parents and wants to do things as she seems, and which is disrespecting for parents. Any suggestions there?
She's a teenager.
Yeah. First off, read the beginning of it. Is the girl doing okay in school?
It says 13-year-old is good at studies but has a lot of attitude. So it sounds like a good student but doesn't want to listen to the parents, and probably it seems like she's very disrespectful to the parents.
Okay, so there's two problems to me. I agree with you, Karen. It's kind of this is how adolescents typically react, but my hunch is that they're not following the rule of if a child demonstrates responsibility, you have to give them freedom. My hunch is that that's out of balance. If she's good with her studies, she should be getting more independence and free choice. And my hunch is she's angry because she's not. And so she's wondering where's the reward for what she's doing. So typical teenager, like you said, Karen, she's going to give you attitude and not be truly emotionally honest because she doesn't quite know what's going on inside of her. So she needs some help in being able to bring it to the table differently, but the parents need to be open to examining, are they rewarding this kid enough for, the good behavior that the kid shows?
Okay.
What's your thoughts, Karen?
Well, I agree. I feel like if she's already doing well in school, then she's already shown responsibility and that she cares about her grades. She's doing the best she can, or maybe she's not. Maybe that's what the problem is. But the parents said she does well in her studies, so you have to assume she's a pretty good student. So she might be. If I were the parent, I think I would talk to her about it and say, what is it? Can you tell me why you're angry? Can you tell me what upsets you? And maybe that can open up some dialogue to really get to the bottom of where the anger is coming from. May have nothing to do with the studies.
No, probably doesn't.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, that's our last question for today. I just want to thank Karen and Dr. Steve for coming and spending the time with us here today to discuss these wonderful rules, because I'm getting ready to launch my youngest one off to college next year, and there's a lot of this stuff I think I wish I had known when they were a little bit littler, but it does apply to my lovely teenager right now. So thank you so much. And for everybody that is on now, tomorrow about 3 o'clock, you will get a copy of this recording. You will also receive a certificate of attendance for those of you that have been on the live event. So thank you again, Karen and Dr. Steve. And I'm going to go ahead and shut down the webinar for today. Thank you.
Bye, all.